Okay, welcome everybody. This is Alice Harwood's presentation, and let me tell you a little bit about Alice. Alice Harwood is Executive Director of SPACE, S-P-A-C-E, Inc., a 501c3 nonprofit spiritual, practical, artistic, creative education center in Chester, Vermont, and became a certified heart math trainer in 2012. She's worked with many energy healers, including Dina Zalkin Spear, Bradley Nelson, Donna Eden, and David Feinstein, among others. A lifetime member of ASD, Alice also served as president for the Living Waters chapter for 4 years. She has presented at ASD's annual national convention and is an engaging speaker on a range of topics such as heart math and stress reduction, dowsing, kinesiology and geomancy, ascension symptoms, and more. And again, you can find her at aliceharwood.com. So, again, if you would be so kind as to mute yourselves, and we will start the recording. And I am going to share my screen with you. And here we go.
Convention this year. And this year, since we're virtual, I'm very happy to be inviting you to Greenbarn Hollow. And
oops, I'm sorry. Can you all hear that okay?
before we start, I just
yes. Okay, all right.
Would like to honor and thank all of our divine assistants and our ancestors and our guides for connecting us here today. And I want to let you know that my name is Alice Harwood, and I feel that my mission and my purpose is to provide, hold space, and empower people to be and become more fully who they are. And so in this presentation, as you guys have questions, I do invite you to ask questions. I invite you to think about what it is that's being presented this evening, because all of us have the capacity to access divine information. And I am reclaiming the word divining. I'm not using the word dowsing, because I do believe that divining is one way that we activate our source connection. So my presentation is called Your Synchronized Sovereign Self, Becoming Aware of Energetic Impacts and Divining Priorities for Optimal Experience. As we look at the definitions of sovereign, you can see that this is from the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, superlative in quality of the most exalted kind, having generalized curative powers, of an unqualified nature, having undisputed ascendancy, possessed of supreme power, unlimited in extent, enjoying autonomy, relating to, characteristic of, or benefiting or befitting a supreme ruler. So were any of those a surprise for you? I feel like some of those, when I read those, I was like, wow, you know, that is really a magical, amazingly strong word. And synchronized is about having attained synchronization, coming together, coordinating, combining. So when we talk about your synchronized sovereign self, this is just recognizing that there are so many aspects of who you are that are wanting to come together to support your experience here on this planet at this time. When I was little, and I don't know how many of you guys went to Sunday school when you were little, I remember singing this little song about how I was a child of God. And I feel like what happens when you're a child of God and you grow up, right? All of a sudden you have a recognition that you are part of this divinity, right? And you are here as a creator. You are here to co-create your experience. This talk today is just an overview and discussion of how to use your own divining to align with your own divine connection. And these are some of the specific things that I personally have found useful and helpful during this time. Two things that have really worked to strengthen my own personal source connection are coherence, heart coherence, and divining. And I'm talking to you as diviners, which means that I'm trusting that you are all familiar with the divining process, right? Some of you have favorite tools. They're the divining rods that people work with, or pendulums. When you work with these tools, you're actually able to strengthen the connection that you have with the field, with the quantum field. And in that respect, you can become familiar with that feeling internally. When I started, I actually started as a deviceless dowser. And that's that aspect of knowing that your body is your divining tool, right? That's the simple way of connecting directly, saying, body, show me yes, and getting that little rock forward, or body, show me no, and getting that little push back. That is often accompanied with the expansion in your heart space, right? Or a little gut clench in your stomach. It's literally saying, no, get back, stand back, when you get that no. So because you have the capacity to divine, and you recognize that you are a multidimensional being, there are some different things that you can take into consideration to navigate your daily experience. And this is where HeartMath, of course, actually is the one that brought the domains of resilience, and they're very clear about the 4 pieces of your experience here that can be aligned to create coherence. So you have the physical domain, which is about having physical flexibility, endurance, and strength. The mental domain, which is about mental flexibility, your attention span, your ability to focus, the very important capacity to incorporate multiple points of view, especially right now, that feels very relevant, right? Being able to see the whole picture. The emotional domain, which is about emotional flexibility, being able to maintain a positive outlook, understanding that you are responsible for creating self-regulation. And the spiritual domain, which is about spiritual flexibility, your commitment to values, and your tolerance of others' values and beliefs. So when we talk about using divining, it's good to have it to be able to wake up in the morning and then say, okay, which domain would be useful for me to focus on today? That is one way that you could start a day, saying, okay, is this where I spend a little time with the emotional domain? Oh yes, you get that yes. Or is it important for me to really get out there and do something physical today? Do I spend some time doing follow-up on mental activities? Do I, connect with people in a mental capacity? Or is this just a day for me to be in nature, to really nurture that spiritual aspect of myself?
Maybe each one of those things you've outlined for those domains, the spiritual muscle building tools.
Absolutely.
So within spirit, you need those qualities, or you should endeavor to have those qualities if you're going to do spiritual building.
Yes, and in fact, these are just some of the ways that you can strengthen that domain, right? These are some of the ways that you can address what wants to come through. When we're talking about physical flexibility, for instance, and endurance and strength, you may get that while you're working in the garden, right? It may be something where it's like, this is a day to be out there and doing the heavy lifting and doing the physicality and really working your body, right? And
whatever
on
your
your body.
intuition tells you is enough.
This is what you're divining, right? What would be beneficial? How would it be beneficial for me to spend some time today? What needs some balance here? Because what we're talking about is we're talking about heart, right? We're talking about heart, consciousness, will, and body, right? And those are those 4 domains that really need to be in alignment to have the coherence, and that gives you, that strengthens your source connection. Also, there are the 12 chakras that I've written about in the past. If you're not familiar with this, then I do suggest to look into that for researching for yourself. It's been known that we have 7 chakras. In human design, Ra Uhuru talks about how we activated 9 chakras. And then over the last couple of years, it's shown up on my radar. We do have 12 chakras within our body. And again, this is a way that you can say, okay, well, which of these chakras would it be beneficial for me to work with? Is there a need for me to address anything with these chakras today, for instance? And so just very briefly, they also correlate with colors, with the astrological signs, with toning. There's ways that you can tone to strengthen all of these. And so let me just go over them quickly. So you have the root chakra, then you have your purpose, which is about 2 inches underneath your belly button, right? You have your sacral chakra, you have your solar plexus, you have your heart, you have your high heart. High heart is activated when your heart gets broken. Very important to recognize that the heartbreak that we're feeling right now and the amount of grief that has been being processed has been actually a key component to activating high heart in every individual. And once high heart has been activated, then low throat can be activated. And low throat is about being able to speak your truth with compassion. This is the part of knowing that your source self has a voice and is not afraid to speak truth. Then we have throat. Then we have actually identity, right? Identity is the component right here. So identity and purpose work together right now. Knowing who you are is key to being able to align and bring your divine self into this human experience. And your third eye, very important for imaging and visualization. And you have your crown and your angel chakras as well. I think we covered all of those. Are there questions at this point? You guys have questions? Not yet? Okay.
I do.
You do? Go, please ask. That's great.
So you can do divining for anything.
Yes.
You can do divining for, I've got a pain in my heart chakra, and you can ask questions and you can use it as a kind of a personal guide.
Absolutely. And that's why, again, if you wake up in the morning and you have a certain ache and pain, right, that's when you start asking the questions to be able to narrow it and say, okay, well, is this pain related to one of the domains that would be helpful to be addressed? Is this pain related to one of the chakras that I need to spend some time and attention with? Is there a color that would help strengthen and alleviate or heal this? Is there a sound that I can make? Is there a particular action that I can take? Is it important for me to spend some time in nature? Do I need to hug a tree? Do I need to smell a flower? all of those questions, the more that you can ask those questions and really start honoring the answers that you get and following through on them, then the more your body will trust that you're going to take care of it, because our body is the vehicle for navigating this experience, so that in fact consciousness can work with will, right, through heart.
But everything has to be framed in yes or no questions.
When you get to the point where your alignment is so strong, the information can come through.
Telepathically.
Absolutely, you can get information and it will come right through in complete sentences, which is what happens for me at this point when I have the big voice come through. It comes through very clearly because I spent so much time trusting the yes, no answers and acting on them, even when it seemingly made no sense at all. Right? Taking those action steps, even if it says drive through this road today, or step outside of your car and take 3 deep breaths, or whatever it is, the information that comes through, honoring that and doing that. It sounds very strange, and this is that part where at this point we're honoring the information that we get so that we can get more. And when you are using all of the senses that you have, that's when you're going to start getting more access to the senses that are just coming online. Your clairaudience, your clairvoyance, your clairsentience, your claircognizance, all of the clairs. Okay?
Yep.
Does that make sense? All right.
I have a
Super.
question.
Yes.
Questions.
Sure.
So you say, oh, should I go hug a tree today? I wouldn't think of asking that question. So where do you get the questions to ask?
All right. Perfect. First of all, I never should on myself. So I will never start a question with should I. I might ask, is it beneficial for me to? Or is it in the interest of? Many diviners, when they start, ask the can I, may I, should I question. I trust that if it's showing up on my radar, then I automatically have permission. So this is that part where you are starting very simply with the yes, no questions, right? And when you come in and you say, okay, I've got something that I need to pay attention to as I'm waking up. Will it be beneficial for me to spend some time on the physical aspect today? No. Okay, so is it emotional? Yes. So there's a start, and from there you can narrow things down. Okay, is this an emotion that's impacting me currently? Yes. Okay, is this an impact that's related to work? No. Is this related to family? Yes. And as you kind of narrow things down, all of a sudden what you're doing is you're shaking yourself back and forth into this alignment where the information can come in, and you can all of a sudden get that, oh, I know what this is about, right? It's that aha, right, moment where then you feel the truth bumps, right? Then you get the body confirmation of, yes, it's exactly this conversation that you've been avoiding because you feel like it would be uncomfortable that really needs to take place, right? And so you are able to take action in that direction. As you work with questions, you will find that more and more the correct wording will happen. And again, it's like a muscle. You've got to practice that. You've got to use it so that it becomes easier. And as you work with others, because right now this is such an important time for working collaboratively, you will hear questions that wouldn't have shown up on your radar. One example is stationing a big stone on this property. And we had 3 diviners here and got 3 different responses. And as it turns out, there were 3 different questions, right? The first question was, okay, Rock, where do you want to be positioned? And the second one was along the lines of, where would it be beneficial in the garden to place this stone, right? And the third one was, where would this stone best be positioned to magnify the beneficial energy for everything in this space, right? So 3 very different questions. And obviously, being able to work with 3 different people, and hear the different questions, all of a sudden it's like, oh, definitely I want to magnify the beneficial energy of everything in this location. So I'm going to go with, the third answer. But that is a great question. And in your own phrasing of questions, you will start to understand and feel into that there's a better way of asking. So good. That was a great question. And keep asking questions. Every and any kind of question is making room for information to come in. The minute we start making statements, we're saying we're full, right? But the question itself says, I'm open to receiving guidance. I'm open to receiving information. The minute I say something like, well, I don't know, well, that's right. And you won't know. The minute you say, well, what else is possible? You're inviting that information to come in. All right, let's see what was next. Okay, another thing that has really been helpful for me has been human design and the daily gate that we're in. Human design is the synthesis of the I Ching, the Kabbalah, the chakra system, astrology, and every single one of these incarnation crosses comes with personal dualities. It comes with an understanding of how we're led consciously and subconsciously in our own personal incarnation processes, where the stars were aligned actually 3 months before we were even born. They say that it was formed at the time of birth. In fact, this design was put in place before you ended up. I believe it's 3 months before you ended up. The collective impact of the human design and the gene keys right now is really a great way of looking at how we work with others. It's a way of navigating our own experience here on the planet at this time, understanding our own strategy and authority, and understanding what energies the current human design gates are highlighting and activating. Right now we're in a different gate, and they change. Every gate changes every 6 days, and every single line of every single gate has its own energy and frequency that highlights the shadow and the gift and the CD. So there are shadows to each gate, and I would say too, this is such a beautiful opportunity to look at doing shadow work. Everything that we don't like about someone else is mirroring an aspect of ours to heal. And this is where, when you're willing to take responsibility for that, that's when you're able to understand your power, right? This shadow work is actually liberating some of the density and heaviness in your life so that you can actually have a greater experience of alignment and empowerment.
So you have to kind of feel hate before you can feel love? Or feel evil or feel darkness before you can sense light?
We certainly have contrast in the gates. There are, and that's the beauty, right? We came here to experience contrast. And I like to say that everything has its right place. In past presentations that I've done, I say, yes, if you have a pile of manure, it has its right place. I'm so grateful for that on my garden, right? Stimulating growth there. I don't want it on my chocolate pudding, right? So understanding, because manure on chocolate pudding, some people might say that's just evil, right? And that's because it's not in its right place. So recognizing that there are shadows that have played a role, then you can get to the point where you love your shadow and you move into acceptance of the role that it's played. And then you can actually release anything that's held within you with gratitude and appreciation, right? So one aspect of that as a metaphor that I was given was that of a deep sea diver going down to the depths of the bottom of the ocean, and they need these weights to get to the bottom of the ocean to be able to look around. And then when it's time to come up, you can drop the weight, right? It's played its role. You can't drop it all at once because you get the bends. And that's that part about being grateful along the way for everything that's taking place. That's why we have, is there something that would be helpful to clear? Again, if you're in a certain gate and you're very aware of what the shadow is, that's that part about, is there something in human design that would be beneficial for me to address today? Yes. Okay. Is it actually the shadow, or is it a part of this that is being mirrored and reflected to me around this? Yes. Okay. How do I need to go about clearing this? Is it including a color? Is it including a tone? Is it including, walk in nature? Again, there are different methods and tools that you can use for clearing. You will start to get information for yourself as you tune in to these different methods, skills.
What are the gates telling?
There are 64 gates or 64 gene keys, and Richard Rudd did an amazing job taking the work of Rahul, who did the human design, and he took it to the next level with gene keys. This is, again, we move into a new gene key every 6 days, and he's written this with an awareness that every single gene key of which we move through all 64 throughout the year.
Is it like an astrological orientation to these genes?
There is a component of that, absolutely, yes, right? And so you can use his book as an oracle, right, or a divining tool, where you say, okay, there's something that I need to address today, and just open it, and as you look down, you can say, oh, wow, look at this. I'm looking at the shadow of superficiality. I opened to this, and the repressive nature, which is being absent, and the reactive nature, which is hectic. And so this is something, a way that you're just asking for this to come to your consciousness.
Visual guides.
Exactly. So bringing things to consciousness is one very key way of being able to address it, because what doesn't come to us as consciousness comes to us as faith, says Jung, right? And so we have, when you start delving into this, and you can divine, is this going to be really useful for me to do further work on this and become more aware of this? As you do that, then you're pulled into those components that are helpful for you. Again, using it in whatever way feels right to you. And it could be wake up in the morning and just flip open the book, or you're actually receiving the information and following through on the lines of that particular day. All right, were there other questions? Are there other questions?
I need to get a chair.
Oh, yes, yes, please make sure that you're comfortable.
She's better with
Perfect.
my back's better with
Right. Another, thank you for paying attention to your physical domain. Making sure that you're comfortable is very important, and honoring the body, because the body is our vehicle for doing this work here at this time. All right, astrology. Of course, this to me is ancient and has been around for eons, and this is fascinating. Right now, we've moved into Ophiuchus, taking that into consideration. This is the 13th sign. This piece right now is bringing new information to light for all of us. The role that astrology plays is very different for everyone. You might simply be using the energies that are at play with the sun sign, which are the different elements, right? So you have the water element, the earth element, the air and fire. All of these different, all of the 12 astrological signs have their own characteristics of the elements, of the fixed pieces, the cardinal pieces, the mutable pieces. Knowing when to utilize them to support whatever your decision making is can be very helpful. Again, it's up to you to divine and say, is astrology, would that be useful for me? today in doing any of the work that I have planned on my to-do list. Or you might notice that the moon is completely void of course and realize when the moon is void of course, nothing has a lasting impact, right? Yes,
So what is the 13th sign?
Ophiuchus.
But
This,
it isn't on there, of course.
it is not on there. And in fact, the Native Americans knew that there were 13 moons. And so there was a distinct honoring of those 13 moons that has been kind of, was changed.
How does that link to the 13th line calendar?
It does, absolutely. And there are some people who believe that there is moving back into the divine feminine as the odd numbers are feminine, and the male number, or the male is even, or even the even numbers. So I'm still playing around with understanding this myself. Yes.
Well, I was just wondering where it might fit in to the other side, or what spot it might take up. Who knows?
Great question. In fact, there have been books that were written specifically about this sign. If you're, as you're tuning in, if you get a strong response on this, would be really beneficial for me to pursue information around this. That's an example of trusting the guidance that you're getting to say, I need to find out more about this. Again, this is a bit of an overview of so much that in fact, we could spend an entire day talking just about this, right? Or just about the void of course moon, which, if you're not familiar, this is one piece that I can say is very important. This is when the moon is in between signs, and in fact, any action that's taken really may not have any lasting effect. So that's something to consider. If you're not concerned about that, if you have an important conversation that you don't want to come back and bite you in the butt, that would be a good time to have that conversation, right? Supposedly, Nancy Reagan had President Reagan give very serious information during the moon being void of course. So it didn't have any kind of seriously lasting impact. I don't know if that's true, and certainly it feels like that would absolutely make sense.
Which ones have been most worked for you?
So far, all of these have had an impact, and again, this
So
is
there's no ranking, or there's no weight.
no,
one versus the other.
no, and this is the,
Awareness of everything that we need.
right. And again, these are just some that have played a part this last year as I take into consideration where everything is, right? To say, okay, this is really important to take into account today. The fact that I'm not going to look to get anything serious done during these hours, where the moon is void, of course. Or now we're in an Aries moon, which means a lot of energy to get things started. Or now we're in a Virgo moon, which is all about cleaning up messes and
But
being very
this is
meticulous.
all about the influence that the planetary positions have on people.
Correct. That's correct. And recognizing, when you recognize that you're being impacted at that level, utilize that energy, right? Why not tap into that and actually align with it in a way that you're not, trying to paddle upstream, right? So again, your divining will give you some guidance of how to maximize that. All right. Biodynamics. This is yes, Rudolf Steiner. He's so absolutely ahead of his time in so many ways. And I have a picture of this up here. I love this calendar. There are other calendars that you can get. This is Earth Haven, and for the East Coast, I believe they make them for the West Coast as well. And when we talk about biodynamics, this is just one component of how I've incorporated this. You can see that every single day has an element, right? So the question is it a root day? Is it a leaf day? Is it a fruit day? Is it a flower day? what does that mean? It means that those energies are highlighted by the way that the planets are lining, and all of the energies are coming together. So not only are you going to consider planting roots on a root day, you might consider eating roots on a root day. You might find that they taste better on their day. So beets, potatoes, carrots, right, ginger, or salads, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, corn, fruit or zucchinis, tomatoes, and flowers like cauliflower and broccoli. There are gray days or gray periods of the day where it's not beneficial to actually plant anything. I would say fast during those days. Find other things to do in the garden like mulch, or spread manure, or do something else. But again, the biodynamics really is about learning how to navigate with the energies that are present so that you can maximize them. And numerology. This again, this is ancient. This is not necessarily about math. This is understanding that every number, just like every letter in the alphabet, has an energy and a frequency that it contains. So number 1 is about new beginnings. It's a number about the self. It's a unity number. Number 2 is the duality number, human versus the divine, some polarity. 3 is a catalyst number. It's about creativity, joy, and inner child energy. 4 is Mother Earth energy. It's the physical world, it's understanding or being based in structure. 5 is a very dynamic number. It's a number ruled in Mars in astrology. It's very fast. 6 is a sacred number. It's about communications. It's about harmony and balance and love. 7 is the number of divinity, wholeness, perfection, learning life. And 8 is a practical number. It's about structure. It's about manifestation. It's about getting business done. 9 is a number of completion. It's about being sensitive and psychic, and it's about humanitarianism. And 11, I left 11 up there. It's a master number and about illumination. And again, numerology is simply looking at the date, looking at the numbers in the date, looking at how they can be added together to form a single digit, which then gives you the underlying energy of the day. You can take that into account. You might look at numbers as guidance. If you're seeing numbers in front of you on a license plate, and you can say, oh, look at that. And it kind of hits you like a message, right, from the divine. Everything that you see is feedback from source. Everything that you see externally is a message for you to figure out how in alignment are you with yourself.
But sometimes you can put that combination of numbers together in more than one way. If you take 2, 3, 4, 1, and people can get different combinations. So how do you determine what the real number is?
You divine. You divine, right? Is this number complete
Right.
in and of itself? Yes. Or is this something for me to further reduce? Yes. My number is 17. If you ask yourself right now, what is my personal number? Do I have a personal number? Do I have a number that that I know that is my number, will I recognize it? And my guess is, if you've not asked yourself that question, and you do, and you sit in that moment of stillness, it will show up for you. My base number, when I look at the date of my birth, there are 8s, all through it, there are 8s. And I live at 2868, that's another 3 8s. The last 4 digits of my phone number are 1717, which are more 8s, right? So there is it's very clear to me that when I see 8s, that it's just like, pay attention, you're being very practical, you're about manifesting, you're about recognizing that you're on your path, you're doing what needs to be done, you're getting things done. All right, and again, time and timing. This has been very, very fun to watch this year, how time and timing play a role. we're here in 3D having this very linear time, this linear experience, space in space and time. And because of that, we feel almost that there is an if-then sequence. If I do this now, then this will happen. And yet we're starting to understand that moving into 5D, this dimensional shift means everything is available in the now, everything. So the concept of linear time is really changing. You have every single timeline available to you in this now moment. What does this mean for divining? It means that you may ask a question, and again, it may be that you can clarify for yourself. For me, it's always asking, if I don't get an answer immediately as I'm divining, I can say, is this a timing issue? And I'll get a yes. And so I realize, okay, when you're talking to your rods and you say, or you're looking with your rods, and you know, is this a timing issue? Then mine will do a wishy-washy thing. It's kind of like saying, I'm not ready to give you an answer yet, right? So this is really an opportunity to say, okay, I'm gonna look at something else because this specific thing is not going to be addressed right in this moment. This is not for this moment.
So every question you ask doesn't always give you an easy answer.
Right, right. And or there is a better time to be asking it. Yes. It could be that you're phrasing it. However, I feel like at this point, it is a helpful question to ask, is this a timing issue? Because once you ask that, and if you get a firm yes response on that, just put it to the side, right? Other things that are happening right now is timelines are moving and shifting and merging, and people are really noticing timeline glitches. The linear time is not straightforward anymore. And people are, I've had some stories from friends. There are two that happened just this last week that I find very entertaining. And one is that my friend went into the spice drawer. She was looking for basil. She couldn't find basil, but there were 2 jars of dill, right? And the next night, so, you know, she made this little mental note to put basil on the shopping list. And the next night, her husband was cooking dinner, and she said, he said, well, do we have any dill? And she said, yeah, we have dill. We just need to remember to get basil. And he said, no, we have 2 jars of basil right here. I just can't find the dill. So there's something that is definitely funny about having these experiences that are almost simultaneously and overlapping, whether or not it's 2 timelines that are kind of merging and coming together, or whether we're jumping from one to the other. You know, this is that part where you could easily think that you're losing your mind. However, this is a component of moving from 3D to 4D and 5D.
When you have the sense that, I think we've all experienced this one, time has slowed
Yes,
and time has sped up. Is that?
it's all part of it. And Einstein addressed that too, you know, the relativity. Right.
Yeah.
So moving into your divine alignment and co-creatorship, right? That is another aspect of something that you can play with. Is saying, okay, I'm having so much fun right here in the here now. I want to stretch time to fully enjoy it, to fully immerse myself in this experience. Or, and I remember doing this as a young child, it's very interesting, being on the bus and saying, oh my gosh, I want to close my eyes and be home and not have to sit through this 1.5-hour bus ride, right? And then just realizing, oh, I open my eyes and then I'm home, right? So being able to, you know, collapse time or stretch time as needed is really helpful, especially if you decide you're running late, but then you're like, wait, I work with divine and perfect timing and arrive at work 5 minutes early. So fun ways to navigate, because right now all of this is up for shifts and changes.
How does the polar shift fit in solar?
That is a great question for another presentation. That's one of those things that if we had another hour or 2 tonight, I might go into detail.
Excuse me, Miss Harwood, may I ask, Miss Harwood?
Recognizing that we are a microcosm of the macrocosm, right? Like looking at this brain cell, this image of a brain cell right here, and then looking at the universe. I love Peter Russell talking about the global brain and really recognizing that every single one of us is necessary, because if we are here in this body, in this human body at this time, we are playing a role, and we are
Oh no.
playing a role, bringing ourselves into coherence and bringing that divinity through to really play our part fully on the planet at this time, right? We are the global brain together. We are the global heart. We are really working together to maximize our alignment and our potential here. So, what other questions might you have? That was a very rapid overview of so many different pieces. And so I want to leave you with a little bit of a chance to ask questions on anything that I brought this evening. Yes.
So if you ask a question and you get that squiggly, well, my pendulum goes in a circle. Could it possibly be that I worded the question incorrectly, or try again?
Certainly you can have agreements with your pendulum. Certainly you can do that. You can, because you are in charge of programming your pendulum. And so there is a component, and so I like to tip my hat to Brandon Day, fellow diviner, right? Who says that for him, he aligns his pendulum to the inner child, to the sacred heart, and to the higher self. And once he has full connection of those three components, he knows that when it is moving in a counterclockwise position, that things are harmonious. And if it's clockwise, that it's disharmonious. I like to remember that if I have a question again, that I'm not getting clarity, then I remember to ask, is it a timeline? You know, is this a timing question? Is this a timeline question? Would it be better to be asking about this later? And then you can also ask, you know, if you're not getting a response, ask, is there a better way for me to word this? And immediately you're going to get some kind of response, right? So getting to the point where you are refining your question based on the response of your pendulum or your rods, or feeling it in your body. When you get the question right, you'll feel it. It runs through your truth center and you will get the truth bumps and you'll say, oh, I got it. You know, like Einstein said, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I would spend 55 minutes refining my question, or, you know, to answer a question, 55 minutes. Because once you ask that question correctly, the answer is inherent, right? So that is a really good point. And so that's part of the communication that you have, right? Am I asking the right question? What the heck's going on? I'm not getting any kind of clarity here, right? It's like, it's a timeline issue. It's a timing issue. You know, whatever else needs to come through can come through. Yeah, great. Any other questions? Well, thank you guys so much for being here today. I'm really glad again for the energy and attention that and the time that you've spent with me. And I really do trust that you'll either be able to connect with further questions at some point, or that you'll be able to take this information and make it useful somehow in your own lives. Thank you.